All right, thanks, Josh. Thanks for coming on, mate, to
Pleasure,
the CIP podcast. For those who don't know Josh, you're a resilience coach, an ambassador for NACOA, and you're also 8+ years sober.
Yeah.
So, yeah, mate, talk to me. Tell me, like, why did you get sober?
Why did I get... to be honest with you, I think, like, for a long time I used to say I got sober for my kids, right? So I had 4 children when I quit drinking. And I think that's, like, true to a degree. But I think really I got sober in the end because I didn't feel like I had anywhere else to go. For me, it was like drink stopped working, really. Stopped. Yeah. I was miserable when I was drunk. And that hadn't always been necessarily true in my life. And I think when the pain got too much, that's why I stopped. But I was 24 at the time, right?
You was 24. Oh, interesting, yeah. I was 25 when I got sober.
Was you 25? Yeah.
It was a tough... How old are you now?
33.
You're 33.
Yeah.
So I presume back then, it was similar to when I got sober. It weren't cool to get sober back then.
There wasn't like... There's a lot of like sober stuff going on now, right? It's like a bit of a movement, isn't it? When I got sober, there was none of that.
No.
Do you know what I mean? There was literally none of that. And I got sober, to be honest with you, when I first got sober, I got sober still going to pubs and that because there was no one at 24 years old that was sober. So everyone I knew was in the pub. So for probably the first year, I did a lot of going in the pub still most nights and having Coke and doing like 8 cans of Red Bull on a Saturday night, you know what I mean? And still having like a similar hangover in the morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was different, and I had to like find different kind of demographics of people to move. Went to church for a bit.
Catholic church or
Christian church? So it's like a Pentecostal one where it was all singing and dancing and stuff
nice.
like that. I got quite into it, and it was a nice place. But to be honest with you, I was trying to seek a group of people that would accept me.
Yeah, like a fellowship or a connection.
Yeah, fellowship, a connection. Yeah. Because it was lacking. It was lacking in my life all the time. And of course, you know, when you get sober, now you're sober, you're still trying to seek that connection. But in those first year or two, certainly for me, I had no idea who I was. And I certainly wasn't what I'd been thinking I was all my life. Do you know what I mean?
Did you go to AA or NA or any of them sort of fellowships?
Yeah, I went to AA. Yeah. So yeah, I got sober in the rooms, really. I got sober in AA originally.
What do you think was different for you from there was something obviously in AA that worked that didn't work in the church. What do you think it was, like the missing thing for you?
I think it was like my people.
Yeah.
I still now, you know, the kind of person that I am, there's still a sense for me of when I'm amongst drunks, people that, you know, are drinkers but that are trying to quit, there's something about me that still feels most at ease being who I'm supposed to be. There's an underlying comfort that comes with that. So being part of that in that way, I think was really like soothing for me in the initial years, but also the group aspect of it. I've always, throughout the 8.5 years, I've found any kind of therapeutic work better in groups than one-on-one. I often find therapeutic work one-on-one, it's a little bit too intense for me. I feel a little bit too, I don't know, exposed when I do it. So the group work really works for me, and it gave me an opportunity, because you know with like fellowships like AA, I did a lot of traveling about and going to all these different meetings, and literally like practicing who I am or who I was becoming, literally showing up at in these group meetings where I felt safe and practicing being this new version of myself that I wasn't used to, which was, you know, not around this sort of tough guy, you know, who wants it very guarded image. I was learning to be more open and free in who I was. So the group aspect and the feeling part of something, I think, was major for me.
Yeah. It's funny because on the workshops that I run with the CIP project, we get a lot of ex-vets on there, and they describe this sort of connection they had with their military mates, where they couldn't really replace it anywhere, but it was a group of men all sort of fighting the same fight, fighting the same struggle. And it sounded very similar to how it was like for me, the same as you. You know, when you get sober, and it was like we were all pretty fucked. We was all fighting our own demons, but we was all fighting the same fight. Yeah, you know?
Exactly.
And it's a strange thing how that struggle unites people, doesn't it? When you're all fighting for the same cause.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, that kind of idea of being part of a system that wants to protect you, that's there for you, that's all moving in the same direction, is kind of what a family's supposed to be. Right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And when I look back at my childhood, I always desperately wanted that. I wanted to feel part of something, and I never quite felt part of my family. Even when my mum remarried. Originally, my dad was an alcoholic as well, and then my mum remarried to my stepdad and created quite a healthy as they can be anyway, family system. But I still always had this sense that I wasn't part of it, and I think the relationship with my stepdad was still like, it was a stepdad relationship, so there was still fear from me that if I act and be certain ways, then he might reject me, like I obviously felt abandoned by my dad, who was an alcoholic. So I think like I've always had tricky relationships with men until I got sober, and to some degree when I still in sobriety, yeah. Certainly in my teenage years, I knew how to be like laddie, like, "Wee, come on," like that kind of stuff, but I didn't know how to be in a relationship with a man and be there for one another, yeah. And I think that band of brothers offered it in a way that was reachable for me in those early years, that we're all united in the same fight, yeah. We've got each other's back, right? We're sticking it out and staying sober. That was something that I could do and feel part of. And I'd never been in a loving relationship with a man, in terms of like a sort of interdependent relationship. I can be there for you and you can be there for me. I've never done that. Because I'd never had that with a father figure. So I think a lot of that it gave me that. It helped that inner sort of wounded inner child part of myself start to reconnect with the world and feel part of the world in a way that it never had.
Do you think, because I know we got some friends in common, we got Ollie from Wimbledon, he's a great guy, he's about the same length of sobriety as I am. And do you think sort of having people your age but who'd walked the road a little bit longer, did that play a part for you, like of creating that safety, that feeling of safety, of brotherhood?
Without question, and listen, Ollie will be absolutely made up that you've mentioned him as well. But when I met Ollie, I was probably 2 years sober, right? And I'd done the whole sobriety thing, which was like, I was just going to meetings, I wasn't doing anything else outside of my life. And I went to a young person's meeting in Oxford on a Friday night, and Ollie turned up there. And he'd been at a drum and bass rave the night before.
Yeah, right? I remember he loved that stuff.
Yeah, right. And he was like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years sober at the time. And he was like, "Oh, I haven't slept last night. We was at this drum and bass rave." And he was going on about like girls and all that kind of stuff. And don't forget, we're young lads, right? We're young men. And I was like, "What, and you're 3 years sober?" And he was talking about sobriety in a way that clearly showed that he was doing the deal, right? He had something that I wanted. But he was also still being a young man. And I think, that kind of stuff did save my life. Because then I was traveling to London every weekend. I was going out, and we were going out raving and living a life sober. And that was when I first started to think, I could really do this. I could live a life like this. Because before that, I remember saying to a guy, lovely man, he was like in his 60s, had been sober, I don't know, 10, 15 years at a time. And I said to him, I don't know where to go. Like, I just don't know what to do on a Saturday night. It's all right going to a meeting, but I feel if this is it, I'm struggling a bit. And he said to me in a loving way, "Is there not like a cribbage thing you could join?" And I was like, "Cribbage?
Cribbage?
I'm 24, mate. Cribbage." Do you know what I mean? But that's all he could offer me.
Yeah.
So when I met people like Ollie and then was introduced to a bigger sort of group of people, it changed me. 100% it changed me, because them living their life in that way made me have a belief that I could potentially do that too,
Yeah, of course. Because I think that's another aspect of getting sober in your mid-20s. It was for me anyway, is like, getting sober is hard enough, but it's like there is an aspect of that. It's like you are still a young person that still has a desire to go out, meet people, meet girls. I was single when I came in, and it's like, that's another aspect of it, is like you can come in, you can get sober, and it doesn't mean your whole life has to stop. Like that can still happen. It just has to change in certain ways, doesn't it?
And you have to get used to a lot of stuff. Like I remember having a lot of fears that people wouldn't talk about. Dating, right? And I had 4 kids and was single when I got sober. So I'm like, who's going to want to date a 24-year-old alcoholic with 4 kids? Like, I genuinely, and I was thinking, I'm never. And then you have to start thinking about like sex. And to have sex, I used to get drunk.
Yeah,
right?
sober sex.
For the
first time.
I'm thinking, a couple of seconds and I'm going to like ruin my credibility. Do you know what I mean? Because I'd always done it with drink and drugs, right?
Yeah, cool.
And then I had to like, and I'd never been able to talk to people about that kind of stuff. So to meet other people, and you know, as somebody now that's sober and in my sort of mid-30s, and I live very much a family life, it's different if I got sober like that than it was when I was a young single man in my mid-20s. You know, when I got sober, I thought I was getting sober to cling on to life with the rest of the losers. That's why I saw it. I did, right? And you know, I got sober in Swindon, so there was like one AA meeting a week, and I would sit in there, and sometimes I was the youngest by like 20, 30 years. And I sat in there, and you know, at the first it was brilliant, but then I did start to reach this stage until I met people like Ollie, where I was like, if this is it, that's starting to look a little bit more attractive again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So, you know, people like Ollie, but particularly Ollie, saved my life, really.
Yeah.
Meeting him, it did, yeah.
It's funny, because I had the same experience when I met Ollie. I got asked to do a chair in Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And I done the chair, and I think I was about 2 years sober. And for me, going to pubs and clubs was a no-no.
Yeah,
simply because it wasn't so much when I was about 2 years that I would drink, but it was like I might see some old faces who I had scraps with and stuff like that. So it was a big no-no. And when the meeting finished, he was like, Ollie was like, you're coming into Wimbledon, we're going to go out and have a bit of a dance and that. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Serious, mate? You know, well, you know, we're going to have a bit of fun. And I was like, wow, like, you know, I had the same experience as you. You can actually do it. And that's when I started trying to, you know, find a group closer to me, because I was based in Isleworth. Wimbledon was a bit too far, and I found a group of mates who you can go out, they know you're sober, and you got no pressure to drink and just have a good time. But you know, that as well brings a new set of problems as well, because now I'm a young, sober, 25, 26-year-old man, and there's lots of drunk females. You know what I mean? And then it was like, okay, so how do I navigate through this now? You know what I mean? With a sober head, you know?
And at first you don't, right?
Yeah, of course, you get it wrong.
You don't, you get it massively wrong. And I think that's like a really important thing. I always say, like, since I quit drinking, I stopped using alcohol and drugs, I've had 1,000,001 different addictions, right? Do you know what I mean? I get addicted to, you know, in those early days, straight away it became women, right? It was like, you know, I'm doing this deal, I'm doing everything, I'm sober, right? What's the harm in what I'm doing here? But you know, in the end, it kind of starts to have the same effect on you, right? And I think over the 8 years, it went from women and then less obvious stuff. Helping people's a really good one, because nobody calls you out on that. I mean, I was addicted to counting calories at once. You know, I looked like an absolute Donis, and everyone thinks, you know, everyone's saying, "Oh, mate, I wish I could do what you're doing," and I'm obsessed. You know, I'm measuring rice to the gram and all that kind of stuff. It's not healthy. It wasn't healthy. And like I said, I think, you know, the kind of helping people and then the work that I do in my life today, got addicted to that. Would just give me more all the time. So I think like the behavioural addictions that you can kid yourself, you know, the counting calories is a perfect one, because everyone's just telling you how brilliant you're doing. And you think, you look in the mirror and there's that voice in your head.
Proof.
But the voice in your head's still never good enough, is it? Do you know what I mean? I was desperately trying to put weight on because I was so small when I got sober. And now I find myself at 33 desperately trying to get the weight back off. Do you know what I mean? So it's always like, happiness is always over there, and you've got to be really careful of that, ain't you? Because you know, you can get caught up and you miss the moment.
Yeah, cool.
You know what I mean? And
That's
I think that it comes back to that idea of presence, doesn't it?
Yeah, but this is so important, this message, to be shared, because people often think, great, I'm sober, that's the done deal. And it's like, no, this is just the foundations of a house that you're going to build, of a new life, you know. And I know for me, getting sober was like the beginning of my journey of getting to know myself and understanding myself. And I know you're massive into, I mean, you're an ambassador for NACOA, which speaks for itself, but in healing that inner child, and like, I'd love you to just share more about that, because you've got some of your stuff on social media I find really interesting.
I think the more that I started to, you know, when I first got sober, I took on the idea that this is just the way that I am, and I need to change, right? I need to become a better person. And I think over time, what I started to realize is that so much of the ways that I thought this is just who I am wasn't true. I started to look back at some of this stuff and started to think, hang on a minute, what about this message that in and of myself I am lovable already? You know, if I look at my own kids, and I know you've got children, I would hate for my 9-year-old son or my 4-year-old daughter to be looking at her dad or his dad and be thinking, what do I need to be in order for him to love me? My message to them would be, you don't need to be anything. My message to my children is, your value exists because you exist. So when you start to understand that if their value exists because they exist, which it does, it's an innate thing, how have I gained this perception that I need to change who I am so drastically? And then you start to look back at my childhood. My dad was like quite a violent, chaotic man, scared me when he was drunk and scared me when he was sober. And as a kid, I saw my mum's struggle with that, yeah? And my mum would, like, after a bad night, she'd be frantically acting like everything's okay. She'd say, this isn't your fault. Your dad's angry. I don't want you to worry about this. And even at like 3 or 4 years old, I would sense my mum's struggle. And when she said, you're okay, aren't you, to me, I knew she wasn't seeking to create a space for me to explore my emotions. Emotionally, she was full. And she was seeking for me to confirm that I was okay.
So she was like a bit of a caretaker for your dad.
Yeah.
She'd clean up all the mess.
Clean it
You
all
all
up.
right, son? Everything good with you? Great. Let's crack on and start again.
Let's sweep the emotions under the table,
Yeah.
right? And push them down. And so what happens is, as a child, I start to gain a sense of that every way that I am, right, it doesn't make me lovable. I can't be angry. My mum, I don't want to burden my mum with my worries about dad. She's got enough of her own worries at 3 or 4 years old. And so I think what children really need when they're children is complete mirroring, right? You need as a child to know that you can be happy, sad, lonely, rageful, jealous, all of these human spectrum of emotions. As a child, you need to be able to be them, feel them, and know that you're still loved. And I think a lot of us, alcoholic parent or not, grow up to some degree with the idea that certain emotions are not acceptable. And that was true for me. So I'm pushing them down and I'm not being who I truly am. There's a Canadian-Hungarian physician, Dr. Gabor Mate, and he says that we have 2 innate needs, right? The first one is attachment to our parents or primary caregivers. From an evolutionary point of view, we need that to survive, right? And the second thing is authenticity, but not the sort of airy-fairy stuff that we see like online. I'm talking about at its core, understanding what I'm feeling, knowing what I need as a result of what I'm feeling, and then being able to communicate that within my relationships and my activities. All babies are born authentic. When they're hungry, they cry. They know they're hungry, they cry, they get what they need, yeah? The trouble is, as we start to grow up, is if that authenticity threatens that attachment, then it's the authenticity that loses out every time. Simply put, if I think that by being myself, I'm not going to get the love of my mum or my dad, then I won't be myself. So I learn to become a version of myself. And then when you start to do that,
an adapted version of yourself.
You become an
adapted version. You take the bits
version.
that aren't welcome and you put them in a little bag.
Exactly.
And say,
And then I build relationships in my life by meeting people, working out who you want me to be, and becoming that instead of being myself. So it doesn't matter about the connection you get out of that relationship. I get none. Because I'm not sharing myself with you.
Not all of me is here.
Not all
I'm
of me
just
is here.
showing you the best bits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It might be brilliant for you because I've worked out who you want me to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the age
so
of
you're thinking, this guy's great. He's awesome, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
But inside, you're dying because you know actually this person doesn't like me for all of me.
Doesn't even know me.
He doesn't even know me. Yeah.
You put me in a prison at the age of 13, I'd have acted like a criminal. You put me in a church, I'd have acted like a priest. Because I would have, just succumbed to my surroundings and thought, I desperately need to fit in. And that's, every time you do that, it's an act of self-abandonment. When I turned up for my mum in the way that she needed me to be, I abandoned myself. And by the time you get to the age of even 24, when I quit drinking, my whole persona, I got tattoos really quickly. I like tattoos. But it's no coincidence that I got them really quickly because I thought they were going to make me look more like a man. Shaved my head, yeah.
How old was you when you got your first tattoo?
16,
Right.
17,
Yeah.
But I started to get them quickly and they were all your typical, I mean, look at this, a knight, yeah. Look, I had, on my wrist, I had proud to be. Even when I had it done at 18, the tattoo artist was like, proud to be what? I was like, well, just fucking me, innit? Like, I didn't have, I probably did have all this false pride at that age of my life, do you know what I mean? But
what was it to be like, to make you feel more of like, or project the image that I am a man, I'm tough, or
yeah, there
what
was
it?
There was a lot of that. There was a lot of like, the view, the idea that a man is somebody that's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's up for a fight.
Or was
all
it
the
just
time.
that mates had tattoos, or people you'd seen had tattoos, or was
Look,
it that to fit in?
It was never like a conscious thing.
Yeah.
I never thought if I go and get a tattoo, I'm going to look hard.
Yeah.
Right? But
it
was definitely going on subconsciously.
Yeah, I get it.
Do you know what I mean? The skinhead was there because I wanted to look tough. You know, my resting face was an angry one. It was all subconscious stuff. One, to protect myself. Yeah. And two, because I wanted to be part of, and I wanted to be this tough guy. I wanted to be seen as hard. Do you know what I mean? I spent like my teenage years sort of selling drugs and doing the whole gang stuff. And then at sort of 17, I went into like football violence. And both of those things as well were built around the same stuff of being part of something. Yeah. I was always, no matter what I did, connected to, certainly in my mind, the top boy in each one. And they were like my father figure. I would have killed for them, died for them. I wanted to impress them. I wanted them to father me. And I didn't know that. But I was always doing that. I was always seeking validation from men. And I do it now. It's still in me. If you put me in a room with a load of big tough men, you watch my accent start going slightly cockney, and I'll pump my chest out a little bit and start bringing up some of the chats about when I used to fight at football, yeah? Because that part of me is like, we need to be in with these. We need to be loved, yeah?
It's connection. You're seeking connection.
Seeking connection,
yeah,
but at the expense of myself.
Yeah, of course, yeah. You're selling yourself.
It's selling, exactly.
And the prize is connection.
Exactly.
You know? And it seems like you know, for me as well, I sought that connection through alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
I was convinced that somehow, you know, the connection is there, you know. And obviously it's not. Do you know what I mean? The only connection that truly matters for me, and I'm sure you agree, is my connection with myself.
Exactly.
And that inner child, that little boy that didn't get everything that he needed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, you said earlier that you had the skinhead and the tattoos to protect yourself. Was it really to protect that little boy?
Exactly. It's exactly to protect that little boy. And I think, look, the more that I've developed the work on myself, the more I've started to realize that every persona, every part of myself that shows up to the world is trying to protect me. For me, even people talk about the inner critic, yeah, the one that beats me down. People say, shut that up, don't listen to it, push it out. I say, listen to it. Because if you listen to it, it's another part of yourself that's going, you're a fucking waste of space. And when it says that, if you listen to that part of yourself, and you say, why are you saying this? It's saying because we're going to get burned if you go and do that. And it's all trying to protect that part. We're always trying to protect our core self, right? And when we're wounded in the way that I was wounded, right? I was deeply wounded. Everything that I do is to protect that. Every time I abandon myself, it's an attempt to protect that inner child, that wounded inner child part of myself. That at its core, all of it can be traced back to the idea that as I am, I'm not lovable. Even when I be overly nice. Why, you know, you can be nice, that's to be a human, right? But then you can be nice at the expense of yourself because you feel like if I don't, then they're not going to like me. They're not going to love me, and I need their love, I need their validation, yeah? And I guess one of the hardest things about the inner child work to combat that is somebody like me, I built up a massive circle, loads of people in my life who thought I was really good. And as I start to move into being myself and laying those boundaries and stopping abandoning myself, loads of those people go away. So to not abandon yourself, you have to experience a large amount of abandonment. And it's dirty work. It's not easy.
It's not, no.
It's not, no. You know, there's fruits, and I'm sure we talk about the fruits, but the real work is dog awful nasty when you're doing it, right?
Yeah, of course it is, yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard.
And that's why I think you see a lot of people don't do the work. You know, like you go to America, and in my judgment, the Americans are a lot more further down the line.
Yeah.
Therapy is very normal, self-development workshops are normal.
Yeah.
All the Clear Mind, Mankind Project, them organisations are booming over there. Whereas here, it's a bit of a new thing. And I think it's because of that. It's not easy work.
No.
It's not easy really looking at the darkest parts of your life and then holding a mirror up and saying, how are these ugly parts of your life playing out in your life today?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Because they are playing out somewhere. And, you know, it's such an important part of mental health and getting sober is that at some point you have to go back there and rescue that child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's the difficult work. You know, the drinking and the drugs, people often ask me, when did you begin your healing journey? And it's very easy to say 8.5 years ago. But the truth is, for me, probably when I smoked my first drugs, right? I did cannabis before I drank alcohol. So when I was 12, that was my first real attempt to look for something to fix the way that I felt. And alcohol and drugs were an attempt at that. They were an attempt at a solution. You talked about that, the kind of connection that I was seeking in them, right? And I think there was a period, perhaps when I was 13, 14, 15, when there was little or no consequences in my life at least, where I was thinking, this is it. If I can just smoke enough weed and do enough drink and do enough drugs, life's going to be good, yeah? But of course it doesn't work like that. And then when you take all that away, you're left with who he was when it all started, back in there, and that's the work.
It's a great point. So that the alcohol and drugs for you, as it was for me, was a way to treat an inner dilemma. It was like a drug. It was like a prescription to say, I feel this will take that feeling away. So it was a way to escape. So what would be your, advice to anyone, I guess, who's struggling with mental health, but still uses alcohol and drugs?
Look, I think if you want to do the deep work, the deep work that I've been able to do on myself doesn't come necessarily always by some of the methodology that we can talk about and some of the systems that we can talk about. They're great, yeah. Some of the deep work comes when I'm emotionally in the pits and I ain't got nothing to escape it. On a Friday night, when something's gone on with my kids, I've acted out a little bit and fell out with my wife, and I'm sat at home and I'm alone and I'm in my feelings and I feel like I can't deal with them and I don't know what to do, then you look at what the work you're going to do. Because if I could reach for a drink, then I'd reach for a drink and I wouldn't learn about myself. I'd get through it till everyone's calmed down and we go again. And I wouldn't have to do the work, because on those Friday nights, those emotions, when they come on me, when the pain is there, when I'm feeling abandoned, when I'm feeling alone, when all that childhood stuff's coming with me and I ain't got no substance to take me away from it, that's where the work is. That's where I feel like the emotion's going to kill me and I feel like I'm going to throw up and my body's riddled with it, and I have to do the work to bring myself present and think, who am I, where am I, and how do I show up to the world today? If I could have taken a drink in those moments, I wouldn't be the man that I am today, because I wouldn't be doing the work. I could go on, I know you do amazing retreats and stuff like that. I could go on a retreat, do the work in there, right? You might tell me different, but the real work when you go on a retreat like yours starts when you go home and you take it into the real world.
It does, yeah.
And I could go on a retreat every weekend and go back to my house, and when the going gets tough, have a few drinks, and I'm not doing the work that you teach me in a retreat.
100%, yeah.
So that's the work. So to bring it to the question, what advice would I give? If you don't want to give up it forever, I think if you want to do the real work, don't use it to deal with the ways that you feel, yeah, and take some time away from it and then see how you feel, because that's where the real work is, right?
So the work, really, what I hear is it starts with not picking up the drink and drugs. That's the beginning of the work. It's like when you feel the pain and you say, I'm not going to run away from it through alcohol, drugs, other addictions, women, food, sugar, porn, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, don't run away from it, feel it. That's the beginning of the work.
That's the beginning of the work.
Yeah, that's the start of it, and it's ugly. And it's
ugly.
painful.
Yeah, exactly, because it's going to bring up everything. Because the work that should have been done is when I was 2 years old and I first felt a feeling of abandonment. I have two nurturing, loving adults around me that help me to find ways to soothe it, and my brain develops methodology for it, and it's happy days, right? When I'm an adult, when those feelings show up for me, I know what this is. Oh, this is a feeling of abandonment. My brain knows, here's what we do to deal with that. I soothe myself through it, I'm fine, yeah? That didn't happen for me, and I don't think it happens for the main majority of people, by the way, because of the society that we live in and the systems and all that kind of stuff, which is a whole conversation. But when you reach adulthood, you've got to find a way to soothe yourself through that pain. And I'll tell you now, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I stopped the drinking and the drugs, and I'll pick my phone up, a pang of pain, I'll get my phone out, and I'll sit and do what I need to do to escape the ways that I'm feeling, yeah? And I'm not doing the work then. And by the way, because of the work that I can do some amazing stuff when I'm in a bit of pain. I can create a lovely little video or a post and put it on, and everyone says, fuck, your healing work's amazing, you're doing amazing. And I go, yeah, I'm doing brilliant. And I'm running away. Yeah? So put that away, right? When I'm not doing the good work that I do that I know has an impact, put that away, yeah? And now who am I with my pain? Now who am I without that, when that's taken away? So there's all the steps. You take the drinking, the drugs, the sex, the women, all of that stuff. Take all of that away, being nice to people, and sit with your pain. And how do you feel about yourself now?
Well, it's really interesting you're touching on that, the social media side of it, Josh, because I completely agree with what you're saying. And I ran a workshop in a college with a group of young adults, basically 17, 18-year-olds, and a lot of them spoke of this addiction to social media, especially one young girl who would often feel feelings similar of abandonment, but would put a picture on of her pouting and would get 200 likes and loads of comments, you know, and it would take away that feeling of, I'm abandoned, I'm not good enough, because look at the world, it's giving me all this validation. You know, and it's an interesting thing, because I think when we got sober, there wasn't social media. No. You know, I think Facebook was just about coming around.
Facebook was there, but
now it's massive. You've got Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and all of this. And I think there is going to be a generation now who their escape, you know, is social media, getting the likes and the comments and all that stuff.
Yeah, and the healing work will be, how, you know, when you're in those moments, can you not post a picture? Yeah. And by the way, you know, I'm not calling it out, because on my social media I put the quotes and the kind of the deep healing work stuff. That's my pouting picture. Make no mistake about it. Yeah, not always, but sometimes I'm like, fuck, I don't feel good. If I can nail one tonight, I'll nail one, and then I'll just keep checking it, and I'll see, oh, boom, it's gone big. It's gone big. But I am liked. I am needed. The pain don't go away. It's coming. It's coming. Yeah, and I think that's the crux of it, isn't it? It's like, in the end, you've got to come back to yourself, and you've got to say, who am I now? Who am I now in this pain? How can I deal with that? And I think in a lot of ways, like, words fail that work. Words fail that work. I think when you've gone there and you know it, you can find almost little pockets of light in those dark moments, because when you're in it, you know, if I get through this moment, I'm going to emerge as a stronger, better person, right? And that's like the resilience work that I do is about teaching people. It's not just keep going. It's not show up no matter what. It's not like I've just got to be able to do this on my own, get my head down, bite down on the gum shield. Sometimes it's taking a step back and saying, who am I now? What am I feeling? What's really going on here? Yeah, we can build up the layers and try and escape that pain as much as we want, yeah? And I think one of the things, by the way, that goes on in the self-help world is we do this rationalizing thing all of the time, yeah? We get up in the rational part of our brain, we shut off that feeling part, and we go, yeah, things were hard, but, you know, my dad was an alcoholic, but he was a good man, he worked really hard, he had his own problems with addiction, I can't, you know, that wasn't his fault, that's just the way it was. And that's great, yeah? And you can live there if you want. But for me, there's a trap door, and when you open it, it's full of those feelings. And I think when we shut ourselves off from our feeling part of our brain, we don't have the opportunity to be present in the ways that we want to. My kids lose their dad when I'm not doing the pain work. Because when I shut myself off from my pain, I shut myself off from my feelings. And so when I'm present, I'm there with my kids, and they're playing, but I ain't there. I ain't there. I'm busy trying not to feel.
Yeah, of course.
And that's the loss, you know.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, society, I believe, is to blame for a lot of this sort of culture of, you know, I mean, there's people who've written books, and the title of the book is Zero Negativity. And then people put posts on good vibes only. And,
exactly.
You know, and it's like, you find often when you give, when you share openly and honestly, people jump in and straight they want to fix you. Yeah, but mate, look at the life you got. Look, you got the kids, you got, you know. And it's like, you know, I'm a human being. I have a full range of human emotions. Sadness, anger, fear, joy. Like, I don't want to just feel joy. I didn't get sober to just feel one emotion.
Yeah.
I want to feel my fear. I want to feel my sadness. I want to feel, all these emotions. My anger as well. Anger is another thing that's put in a category of being bad. When actually anger can be a good human emotion that can help you get things done.
Exactly, yeah.
But I think we often go, no, you just got to be positive, man, positive. Don't be negative, just be positive. And it's like, what I hear you saying there is actually there's a lot to be learned in the darkness.
More to be learned.
There's more to be learned. That's where all the growth
is,
really.
It is, yeah, exactly. And people do that because they can't deal with the ways that they feel. They can't do the work with you. And I get it all the time when I start talking about some of my pain, I'll tell you the people that aren't doing any of the work because they'll start reframing it for me, Tell them about some of the stuff that's going on with my kids or something. They say, yeah, but you wouldn't have it any other way, would you? I say, you come and fucking live this 5 minutes, mate, and tell me if you wouldn't, because I'd change it in a heartbeat. And if you want, I can reframe it so we can all feel nice about it and go, yeah, I wouldn't change it. And it's all for the love and all that. All these kind of things, they're all ways of shutting off the door to the feelings. Yeah,
of course.
That good vibes only. It's a way of avoiding the truth. Yeah, and I think a lot of people grew up doing that reframing stuff. When I used to, growing up, all the messages I heard about my dad was, he did drink a bit too much, but he was a good man. Now I believe he was a good man. But as a child, what was missing was my need to spend some time with that other stuff. The fact that I found him scary. The fact that I didn't feel loved as a child. I needed to be able to talk about that. And especially when it comes to parents, we don't allow people to do that. I sometimes say, I feel like my mum let me down in a few situations. People go, your mum's a good woman. I say, no, she is. Nobody would talk better about my mum than I will. But I'm just saying, in this moment, that caused me pain. But she never meant it. Yeah, I know. It doesn't matter. If I dropped a brick on your foot accidentally, you'd still have to get your foot sorted out. It doesn't matter. I did it accidentally. Do you know what I mean? But we do that. Let's shut off. Let's not spend time with the difficult emotions. And I'd probably even go as far as saying we should stop calling them negative. It's just they're all emotions.
Yeah.
There's difficult and easy. There's or easier.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when we call them negative, anger's the perfect one. Some of the most important people in history have been angry. Martin Luther King was angry, the suffragettes were angry, and look at what they did with their anger. So anger's not bad. Sometimes the way that we react to anger's bad because we don't know how to process it. My wife's very good at getting angry. She's very clear with me. She's very assertive. I know when she's angry, I know when she's upset, but she does it in a way where she's not, it's not horrible. I can't do anger, right? So I leave it in, and then blow up about no milk in the fridge. And then my wife's like, why are you getting so angry about milk? And I'm like, 4 weeks ago, you did this thing.
Yeah, that's it.
And it's because I can't communicate it in the moment, because I'm worried she won't love me as much, or she'll think that I don't love her in the way that I want her to think. So I abandon myself, and I don't tell her.
Yeah.
And that's, that kind of stuff's the work for me.
And that also, it comes back to, when you're a child, and if you do express anger, whoa, it's sort of, no, you can't do that. No, you mustn't hit people. Yeah. You mustn't, don't shout at me. Don't shout at your mum and dad like that.
Yeah.
And you take all the anger and you put it in a bag and you say, that is not welcome.
Yeah.
And then obviously anything you try and suppress, it eventually comes back to bite you.
Yeah, any emotion that we don't find a way to process or release, our body will find a way for us. That is addiction. That is like ragefulness when we're older. But I think that goes on, and we do this goes on. Society teaches us to parent like that. And parents say things like you just said, don't you dare act like they said that in this house. And all you're doing is expressing your anger, natural anger, So like you say, you learn to push it down. And it was no coincidence that I was a saint at home as a teenager, and I was out robbing and selling drugs and getting in trouble at school. And when my mum used to get called at the school or the police used to turn up, my mum used to be like, he's brilliant here. He's such a lovely boy, I don't get it. And of course, I'd grown up thinking I can't express my anger at home, so it was coming out of me everywhere else.
Yeah, of course.
So that's, and because I weren't finding a way to process and deal with it. And sadness was the same, I used to, if I got a little bit sad, my mum would be like, bless her, your dad was a lovely man, I don't want you, you don't be angry with him, he was a nice man, he never meant it. but I needed to release those emotions. It wasn't that I wasn't loving my dad.
Yeah.
I just needed to release them.
It comes back to that thing of holding space, doesn't it? And I think that's a big thing that I do on my workshops, especially in the prisons, you know, with the young men on the anger, you know, and that's where, on all the workshops I deliver, I always ask the prison to give me full authority in the room, you know, because some inmates aren't comfortable expressing their anger in front of prison guards, you know, but often the case is when you give them permission, you say, invite all your anger in, and here is a place in a non-violent way to let it out, you know, and I normally have a bucket in the middle of the room and they can scream into the bucket and let the anger out, all of it. Sometimes it goes on a lot. A lot of anger comes out, anger that's been suppressed for years. But normally when it's all out, it's grief. Yeah. It's sadness. Yeah. It's that inner child who didn't get who wasn't welcome, who all of him wasn't welcome. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think there's something really to say about that, about welcoming all of yourself. You know, all the parts of yourself, even the bits that were told weren't welcome. Yeah. Especially them bits, actually. Yeah. You know.
And that's that, and holding space is having enough about yourself.
Yeah.
To be able to see when you start bringing up something that's, oh, that's touching me, and I want to go, no, don't do that. That's me. I need to reflect on myself. Yeah. I need to be able to deal with that so that I can allow you to bring that in and still feel welcome. Yeah. And that's, you know, holding space is the art of allowing people to do that, to release that emotion. And it is, like you say, after that anger always comes that grief.
Comes grief, yeah.
Yeah, because anger's a reaction normally.
It is, yeah, this is it. And I think, you know, the big thing for me in them moments is when we touch on that grief, is just holding that space. You know, there's a thing in me, even now, after all this self-development I've done, is when I see another man in his grief crying, especially when I work with young inmates, and normally it's around being in prison and a parent has died or whatever, is not fixing it. Just sitting down next to them, holding their hand, and just saying to them, I'm right here with you in this pain. And I'm just going to sit here with you. Yeah. And I'm not going to try and put a bow on it and make it pretty. Like, I'm just going to sit in this space with you and not try and fix it. You know, and that is an art which I think we're just scratching the surface on. Yeah, barely. You know, we all, I find in a lot of people, and especially and I say this for myself, I have had this as well. My self-worth was wrapped up in making it better for you. Yeah, exactly. If I could make it better for you, I'm doing well.
Yeah, exactly.
When in fact, actually, you know, people don't want to be fixed. They just, 9 times out of 10, my experience is they just want to be heard sat with. Just sit with me in this space. Yeah. Like, I don't want a magic recipe.
Yeah, yeah. And that, because as well, when you're looking at a lot of these people's childhoods, you can't fix it. Yeah. And there's you know, when you start to realise the freedom in that, there's nothing you could do to stop my dad being an alcoholic when I was growing up. Nothing. There's nothing you can do. It's too late for me to go and live a good childhood. It's gone. But what you can do, and which is what you're talking about, the work that you do, is be with me now and see how that feels. You know, I talk about step into my darkness.
That's it, yeah.
See how that feels for you. Don't stand at the light and tell me how good it is over there. Yeah. Because I'm not there yet. I'm in here and I need you in here. So come in there. And that's that holding space. And, you know, I do a lot of work in a sort of corporate environment. And you're already seeing now that the mental health kind of work is on the rise. It's already switched up to this reframing stuff, which is like, if you're struggling, do this, and this, and you'll feel better about yourself. Yeah. And I'm like, if you're struggling, struggle. Yeah. You know, people always ask me that advice. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling? I say, you know, get in it, struggle, find somebody to support you. Yeah.
And don't escape it.
Don't run away from it, because it'll come back.
Do you think in a lot of ways? I mean, obviously, I've been in this field of self-development and sobriety, likewise you have, for 8+ years. I've been doing it for almost 13 years, and sobriety, mental health wasn't really cool, but now it's almost becoming like a bit of a business. There's a lot of people in it trying to get rich off it. There's a lot of people trying to get famous. A lot of these mental health advocates still drink and use drugs themselves. It's all getting a little bit blurry, and I know you do lots of stuff, corporate, you're ambassador for NACOA. I think what I'd love to hear is, like, taking all of that aside, what would you like to say as your message to someone? You know, you've been at the darkest of darkest places. You're now plus years sober, resilience coach, ambassador. What would you say to someone, like cutting through all of that stuff as a direct message to someone who's probably watching this, who's probably like, struggling?
I think it's to strip everything back, right? Is to say that the work is not about becoming a new person. It's not about changing. It's about finding acceptance for who you are right now. When you take everything back, yeah? When I look at myself, when I take the work away that I do, when I take the ambassador for NACOA stuff away, yeah? When I strip all that back and I go back, who am I and how do I feel about myself in that moment? Because, I do a practice every morning when I look in the mirror. And I do that because I tell you now, when you look yourself in the eye, who do you see? And a lot of us will avoid that. And we'll avoid it in a whole host of a million different ways. And one of the new ways is this mental health stuff, self-help stuff. Let's get busy doing that. I don't have to spend time with who I am. Take all of that back, take it away, yeah? And ask yourself, who am I? And see how that feels. And I think when you can start to spend time with that, and I can feel myself as I say it, the truth is when I do it, I'm not fully happy with who I am. I'm happy with the man that I'm becoming, and I love the work that I do to try and be the best version of myself. But the real work is when I take all of that stuff back and I say, who's Josh the dad today? Who's Josh the husband, yeah? And I don't always like what I see. And I can reframe it if you want, if that makes you feel better. I know you do the stuff, so you don't need that. But a lot of people need that. But take that away. Take the reframing away, and who are you, and see how that feels, And I think some of the most important work that I have to do for myself is self-compassion.
Yeah, same as me, mate. Exactly the same.
We do this will go out as a podcast, I can watch it back and I can stand back and I can go, fucking look at me, wow. It's amazing, look at it, it's brilliant. It's great, I can feel good about myself, yeah? But what about those days when I wake up and I don't get it right? And I be the flawed individual that I really am in my core. And then I go home and I can't escape that feeling, And that's why compassion work becomes so important, because I have to find a place to say that, on any given day, I'm a human being who sometimes hasn't found a better way to soothe my pain, so I have to forgive myself in those moments.
Yeah,
that's the work.
Yeah, of course.
And I think, I guess to bring it back to the question of what advice would I give is that find a circle of people that are able to hold space for you in that way to discover who you really are. And then once you discover who you are, stick with that person. Because, like you do the retreats, the discovery, we're doing the deep work. But if you go back out and next time the heat's on, you reach for a drink, a drug, or whatever it is, and you do that every time the heat comes back on, then you're just going back, you're retracting. And I think, look, we all make mistakes. My sobriety is vital. But I act out in other ways, and I have to forgive myself for those moments and say, how do I feel about myself now? And again, I keep saying that's the real dogged work that I think's vital.
It's interesting you spoke about being a human being, and for me, when you spoke about doing the mirror work, that is about stopping, not being a human doing. Being a human being.
Yeah.
I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I've done a bit of that work myself as well. And for me, I run up against a few things. I still see the ex-criminal, the ex-drug addict, and then another theme plays out on feeling like I don't deserve what I have.
Yeah.
And underneath all of that is grief.
Yeah.
It's just sad. It's like it's sadness for this little boy who had all this difficult thing and then made loads of mistakes. And I loved your thing when you said about coming back to forgiveness, forgiving yourself. It's constant, lifting the shame off that little boy, and that's what all of the work is about. The work that I do with young men is keep lifting the shame, and having that compassion, like what you spoke about.
Yeah, and when I do the stuff in the mirror, I got like these creams and that I put on my face, right?
Oh, right,
This sounds really stupid, but I do, it doesn't sound stupid to me at all, but I do the looking myself in the eye, And then the creams I put on my face and stuff like that is, I really used to struggle with it, with like, whatever happens, like as you are looking me in the mirror today, I care about you, I love you, right? And even as I say that, I stuttered when I said it. That's no coincidence, because there's that part of me that's going, come on, he's gonna
I
think
feel it now. I can feel the energy is shifting.
Yeah, it shifts, because when you, because when you get alone with yourself, and you say things like, you know, and I can see it now, that childhood part of me, and I say, I love you, Josh, yeah? There's a part of me that's like, whoa, you feel it go through my body. And the amount of experiences I've had with, I don't just do the mirror work, I do like 20 minutes silent time with myself, where I try and listen and connect particularly with the childhood part of myself. And I've had like visual experiences in my mind where I slow myself down. So the first real one I ever had was like, I was doing the breath work, and I went into this garden, and my childhood self was there in a lovely garden, right? He's over there, and he had his back to me, and I ran over, and I was like, Josh, I'm here, right? I'm gonna do all these things to save it, and I looked, and he was just holding this flower. And I was like, I shut up, and I was like, oh, you, and I smelt the flower, it makes me nearly cry, and this is the word, yeah, and I was like, smells good, and he's like, yeah, and he just picked another, and he was like, what I was learning was, stop all that shit, stop all that, I'm here, you don't have to be anything else. And then the second one, and I will tell you about this, the second experience I had, right, and these visuals happened to me.
That's beautiful. Just quickly before we go on to the next one, so that was breath work and like a visualization. You met your younger self.
Yeah. So I've always.
That was powerful for people watching that. I was completely captured.
Yeah.
Energetically, I was there, and I visualized the white flower. I don't know what color the flower was in your visualization.
Yeah.
Was it white?
Yeah.
It's
a white flower,
and white stands for innocence, by the way. So I was
there
like,
you go.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah.
So I started doing this breath work. I do it in a sauna. I don't know what it is about the heat, but there's something in there. Perhaps it's just because I've got 6 kids and that's the only quiet place on the planet for me. But I did it in there, and so I had that experience. And then the next massive experience I had was when I was doing the work that I do, like a lot of stuff, you know, what it's like on stage and the validation that you get. And my relationship with my wife was sort of getting a bit strained, right? And she was putting it on me, and I was like, it's not me. Look how good I am. Yeah. There was a bit of that going on. So I was doing this thing one morning, and I was on, stick with it because it sounds funny at the beginning. I was on the Owl Show, you know the Owl Show in America? The lady with the short hair. It's like a big chat show in America.
I think so, yeah.
I'm on there, she's asking me all about this work, right? She's like, oh, you're doing this? And I'm like, yeah. I'm sat there, and the Americans are like they are, they go, mate, like, yeah, this is amazing. And I was like, brilliant. And then all of a sudden, she starts going like that, pointing behind my shoulder. And I look, and it's me, Josh, the child, that's me, right? And I'm going, carrying on talking to her, and in the end she goes, and I look round and I'm like, I fucking got this, leave it, right? And then in the end she goes, come out here, and he comes out, and it's the child of me, and he sits on my lap, and she's like, and he's angry, and I'm like, I told you I got this. And then she says to him, she says, what's up? And he's like, I just get a bit annoyed. And she's like, oh, you don't like Josh helping, or you don't like him helping all these people? And he's like, no, I love it, I think it's great, yeah, it's great, but sometimes I just wish he'd stop that and come back to me. And I was like, fuck, man, I'm over here doing this over here. I'm loving all of this, the Owl Show, it's all about me, yeah? And I'm thinking, and I'm looking at my family, and I'm like, do you know how good I am? Look at these screaming fans, yeah, doing what I'm doing, right? And then that part of me comes back and says, I don't care about any of that. It's fun, I like it, I'm not saying don't do it, but what about me?
Oh,
and then I had to come home to myself.
Yeah.
And then so when you talk about addictions, this stuff is the addiction. It's all of it. You know, all of the stuff out there is the addiction. When I come back to myself, and the moment I come back to that part of myself, yeah, and I say, I'm here with you. Forget that, right, for a moment. In these moments, I'm here with you. Then my wife gets me again, and my children get their dad again. Yeah, because I'm here. I'm connected with myself. I'm not out on stage with half of me over there. We're as one again. And that connection with self that you talked about earlier becomes the foundation on which I connect to the people I care about. And that's, you know.
Beautiful.
And I don't
That's
often
just
talk about those
beautiful, mate.
visualizations, right, by the way, because they
Just wanna-
almost sound a
wanna-
bit strange, you know what I mean?
It's
But
just beautiful hearing that, mate. Bloody hell. I think, yeah, I just want to stop and just feel that, because that is, you know, it's just beautiful, beautiful moment. And I think for anyone watching this in doubt of sitting in your pain, is like on the other side of that, is that beautiful moment if you're in a child.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it's uncomfortable to begin with, but actually you get through it. You get to experience a moment like that.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't need alcohol and drugs to get there.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
No. And they change you. They change you for a period of time. And then you start, the fans get louder again.
Yeah.
And then you have to recite that stuff. And you have to remember it, and you come back to yourself. And the thing is, you have a big experience like that, and then you use that experience, right? And when you're stood up on the crowd and you're like cheering and you're thinking, yeah, you have to remember, hang on. Today that goes off. I'm Josh, me, the dad, whatever it is, you know.
It's beautiful, mate. It's beautiful. So, massive fan of your work. You know, thanks for coming on. If anyone needs to find you on social media, I'll put all the links in the bio anyway, but maybe just let people know, where can people find you?
Look, my website's joshconnolly.co.uk. All the links to all of the stuff that I do are there. I guess I do most on Instagram, which is Josh_FFW. And yeah, mate, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, mate.
Thanks.
Nice one.